The point that you made about ex ante versus ex post regulation, namely that you may have the issue of, I mean, that the cost of actually case by case regulation is very high, and that's a fair point. That's a fair point. However, I think what we may have missed is that we also had another option, and I'll just come to why that option was more relevant, which is saying that, look, we will observe the market for 2 years or whatever period you decide, and if we do see any kind of abuse of differential pricing, if there is some kind of analysis, some kind of data that shows us that, then we will act, and we will then not act case by case basis, then we will have ex ante regulation, because we would now have a certain amount of data to suggest that, yes, this looks like a trend that is emerging. But that trend is not visible. That trend has not been demonstrated. It has not been demonstrated anywhere else in the world. It has not been demonstrated in some of the most active internet environments. It hasn't been demonstrated in the poorest of environments where internet access is limited. So in the absence of data, and I think that's the point that I've been repeating, in the absence of data, and I think that is the point Pramod also made, in the absence of data to decide on ex ante, and I'm saying not, I'm not saying that you should not act, that you should not, that there is no possibility of abuse of differential pricing. I do believe sincerely that differential pricing has the potential of abuse. It can be, but not all may be abused. Like, I mean, in fact, if internet is an example of anything, it is of innovative pricing. I mean, it can't be anybody's case that the kind of services we use on the internet don't cost anything to produce, but a large majority of services we use are free. Because, so the point is that if we believe that innovation is something that should be on tap, that internet is about permissionless innovation, why on earth should there not be innovation in billing, in pricing? I mean, how can you ex ante say, yeah, that in advance say that there will never be any possibility of doing any innovative pricing? Why not? Why can't there be affirmative pricing in internet? And as I said, let us at least see some trends in the marketplace. We are not saying that this is bound to work out in one way or the other, but I think to suggest that in the absence of data, we will act in advance, I personally think is problematic. Our licensing regime is a serious barrier. And there are 2 or 3 things. One, of course, let's deal with the whole issue of resale. Okay? De facto, resale already takes place because many of the operators have people who are essentially their representatives. I'm talking about this. But what you don't have is what you have in Europe, which is the rights of resellers. For example, a reseller in Europe has there's an obligation on the operator, the ISP, to provide a rebate to a reseller. That there is an obligation to provide that margin, that you're not, if you're a reseller, you get a different rate. You cannot be charged a retail rate. We don't have any of that. The other thing that we have a problem with is, in fact, the issues that you've also raised, is that there are many people who are willing to do their bits, whether it is their area, their localities, their villages, whatever. But the current situation is that you do not have, you need to take a license for a whole state, okay? And that costs several crores, okay? So, and this is actually a major anomaly that India has compared to most mature regulatory regimes. What you do have in the rest of the world is an obligation to pay for, say, spectrum or for rights of way, okay? But what you don't have is the obligation to pay for a permission to start offering services. Our license, after we started auctioning spectrum, has now become basically a piece of paper that permits you to offer services. Now, which therefore creates a huge entry barrier to solve the kind of problems that we are talking about. So we actually have not resolved that problem. And in fact, now it is that there are two real barriers, I think. One is obviously this, and a very significant amount of license fee. It's not a trivial, 500 rupees. It's in crores. The other thing is, of course, that we are dependent on wireless. Our wireless capacity issues are very, very serious. Our internet market is entirely different from, say, most of the markets that we are talking about. Our 65% of our traffic is wireless. Our 97% of our subscribers or connections are wireless. So if we actually do not recognize the centrality of spectrum and the urgent need to devise a different way of auctioning it, to design better auctions, which therefore do not actually create the kind of costs that we are creating in expanding access, we are going to be stuck.